A local group has turned its efforts into a national movement to save the Boundary Waters Canoe area. Our Jennifer Merrily and photojournalist Mike Durenberger traveled to Ely to meet them and find out how their persistence to protect paid off.
The Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness lies in the northern part of the Superior National Forest. With 1,200 miles of canoe routes, you won't hear the sounds of cars there. Instead, it's the call of the wild, home to bald eagles, loons. The headwaters of the BWCA is near Ely, where a decade ago, this group, now called Save the Boundary Waters, started talking about the threat of copper-nickel mining there.
This was really a battle to protect one of the most important pieces of public lands in the country.
What is it that we could do to change the direction our region was heading?
Becky Rahm grew up in Ely, living above her dad's canoe trip outfitting business. She and Reed Karen moved back in retirement and, with collective concern, joined with Paul and Sue Shirkey.
Learned early on as well that the responsibility for enjoying a place this beautiful was to stand up for it and ensure that it was protected forever for everyone.
Paul is an Arctic adventurer and owns a dog sled lodge. Sue started an outdoor apparel line. Steve and Nancy Paregas arrived in the 70s to do research on mining for the EPA. They stayed and are the owners of an outdoor outfitting company.
This was our issue. It was our time to step up.
They strongly oppose federal mine leases near the BWCA. Copper-nickel mining hasn't been done in the state, so they started learning about how it worked and the potential for pollution.
Well, it'd be a wholesale damage to the entire watershed, to the entire wilderness area.
All the way to Churchill.
A path of pollution that would go from here northwards 1,200 miles to the Arctic Ocean.
They took their fight to the nation's capital.
We went to Washington. We had someone to talk about.
Us first explaining this place, what the canoe country was about, why it was so special, why it was so valuable, and why it was so vulnerable.
Other like-minded people in town soon joined the movement.
The amount of research that this campaign has done in the last decade to really explain the threat.
Invested in the future of the BWCA.
We want more and more people to have these experiences.
Adventurers Amy and Dave Freeman paddled 2,000 miles from Ely to Washington, D.C.
And I think we realized that we had this unique skill set where we could paddle and portage and dog sled and use sort of our wilderness skills to combine that with a way of, sharing the science and the importance of protecting the place.
The 100-day trek garnered attention.
More people were coming up to us and telling us their stories and joining in with the cause. It was very encouraging.
The momentum continued with mailers, and as support swelled, so did donations and volunteers. They made those monthly trips to meet with lawmakers.
Now it's hundreds of thousands of people across the country, across the world, who've been awakened both to the beauty of the place and the threat that we're up against.
But the push for protection hasn't been a straight line. There have been lawsuits and strong opposition to their movement, and a community with a history of mining divided.
We have a lot of people that don't like us, in Ely. So, there's people that they think the mining company is a panacea.
The polarity is still very, very strong in this town.
I feel like they just feel it can be done safely. And we feel it can't be done safely.
For now, this group carries the momentum.
We are up against professional lobbyists as regular people, as citizens who are advocating for good public policy.
The group achieved the 20-year ban on mining earlier this year, the most significant accomplishment to date. Still, they're working toward permanent protection.
We need legislation so that it can't be undone by an administration.
We still have a long ways to go. I think that's what we think about more than what we've done, what we've accomplished.
In Ely, Jennifer Merrily, WCCO News.
There's a shop in the North Metro that is one of only a few of its kind. It's a place to find and care for some of our beloved dolls. Rin Clayton takes us to the storefront to meet the owner whose passion has been burning for decades.
If you blink while driving on Highway 65 through Blaine, you might just miss
Mrs. B's dolls.
Marlis Burgess, known as Mrs. B, started making doll clothes as a young girl.
My mother did doll clothes during the war, so I've always played dolls and sewed doll clothes.
Her passion turned into collecting, and eventually,
I think 1958 I started professionally sewing doll clothes.
Mrs. B bought this place in 1984.
It's been an ideal location.
A location for buying and selling thousands of dolls, each with its own textured history.
When I started the business, it was Tiny Tears, Chatty Cathy.
Mrs. B's also serves as a hospital of sorts.
Well, this one lost its arm and leg. I got to put washer in the foot. Composition is from the 30s. They did composition, which is a wood product, ground up wood. And of course, then they quit making most dolls during World War II. So after World War II, they started doing rubber.
Jane Quick, who once had her doll repaired by Mrs. B, gives a final kiss to her childhood friend.
Almost 100 years old.
I just wanted a new home for my doll, so I called Mrs. B back and asked her if she would be interested in taking care of my doll. And, you know, I thought I was just going to donate, you know, somewhere, but this just makes me feel a little better that Mrs. B is going to love my doll, or my mom's name was Fern, so now I said she's going to be taking care of little Fern.
A lifetime of love for dolls, buying, selling, and fixing.
Yes, it's a passion.
Ren Clayton, WCCO News.
That's our show. We hope that it lifted you up, maybe even inspired you to do some good. You can see more of these heartwarming stories every week on Sunday morning on WCCO TV from 7 to 8, kind of our local version of CBS Sunday Morning. And if you have an uplifting story, we want to hear from you. Submit your story ideas. We get some great ones from y'all. Go to WCCO.com/uplift. Thank you so much for being here with us. We'll see you next week.